I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm so thrilled to be talking to Wendi McLendon-Covey all about St. Denis Medical. And one of the things that I love so immediately about this show is that it allows all of the characters to have a sense of competency and a lot of empathy towards each other as people. And so the comedy and the humor kind of very much comes from the situations that they're navigating around themselves and the
Right.
way that they maybe approach navigating through these. And I
Mhm.
was interested in how that tone and that approach to the writing and its characters really shaped the way that you ended up developing Joyce as a character from the writing.
Well, Mara, first of all, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Secondly, yeah, thank you for noticing that. These people are good at their jobs because I don't think anyone wants to watch a sitcom about bad doctors or nurses, times being what they are. I think it's important to make sure that everyone understands we love the healthcare profession. We love healthcare professionals and they do not get enough credit. So we don't want to make fun of them, but we do want to um, bring forward the idea of your work family. And your work family, you spend probably more time with them than your own family. So, you know, things happen and they're always hilarious. You can't choose your work family and you have to get along. You don't have to like each other, but you have to support each other because these are life and death situations. And so, what was great about the character of Joyce for me is that, look, she's an educated woman. She was an oncologist at some point, but she's such an oddball. Why did she become an administrator? Really? I mean, in my mind, she did that because she was tired of being told by insurance companies, look, you can't do this, you can't do that, you got to do it our way. And she's like, well, forget it. I'm going to make change from the inside. I'm going to be an administrator. Well, guess what? That's not how it works. Now she's screwed herself over. She's not even done paying off her student loans. And what's she going to do? Get another job? No, she's close to retirement. She's got to stick it out. So I loved that predicament, and I love Joyce for being a smart ding dong. That's the
Right.
only
And
way
then
I can describe her.
because there's also that mention, Ron's known her since she first came on board as a resident, even. And there's that mention of how she always had her magenta scrubs, but with the shoulder pads, which is kind
Yes.
of a power move. And so, do you also think that part of her journey into administration was she's someone who also just quite naturally likes being in charge and likes trying to organize and manage other people?
Oh, yes. I believe that she just absolutely cannot sit and take orders from anyone. She has to be the bossy one. She's got ideas and she's got to make sure everybody knows what they are. Now, some of her ideas are completely asinine and some of them are good. Like when she gets that 10 million bucks for the hospital, her birthing center, like it's not a bad idea. Her getting a mammogram machine was not a bad idea. She just didn't think about, oh, wait, we actually have to plug this in at some point. Do we have enough? Are we wired for this? Like she doesn't think about that part, but her ideas aren't totally off base. But in the last episode, I've always said, I want Joyce to have some kind of a win because so far she hasn't really had any wins. So we want her to have a win, but what does she do? She goes and overspends that 10 million bucks. She promises it all away and then some because she wants to be liked. And everybody's liking her. They're coming to her. They're kissing her butt. Oh, what can we do? Can we have this? Can we have that? And it gives her a sense of power to say, sure, you can. But then in the end, oh, wait, that's not realistic. I'm taking it all back. That's just Joyce, you know?
And I think that point that you just made about Joyce's innate need and desire to be liked is such a struggle for her throughout the whole
Mhm.
season. And there's so much kind of great vulnerability, but also comedy that comes from that because she's the
Yeah.
boss and that puts her in a different setting. The episode where she realizes she's not privy to any of the gossip the way that she used to be when she was on the floor, or even just the fact that she's mostly in scenes in her office, whereas everybody else is kind of in group ensemble scenes together. And how do you feel like that gave you a lot of really fun tension to constantly play to with her?
Oh, yeah, that's fun because, you always want to be in the know. right? And like, I mean, the way I am right now as a fussy old lady in my own life, it's like, I don't want to go to your party, but you better invite me type of thing. And that's how she is. Like, oh, I want to be the boss. I want to be remote, but everybody's having fun without me. And that bothers me. I think that's a very relatable trait of Joyce's. And it's very fun to play.
And one of the things that's so great about her as a character is there's always something bubbling beneath the surface, and she's
Yes.
always trying to hold everything in really tightly with herself. And so, as you would get the scripts episode by episode, how would you look at not just the dialogue and what's actually happening in the scene, but what do I feel like she has simmering underneath? Because something's eventually going to crack to the surface.
Yeah, I every script we got this season, I felt like, oh God, you're giving me such a gift here because I love playing people that are about to explode. And she is right there. She's right on the surface. And so whether it's, she's gonna go to pieces because her budget isn't going where it needs to go, or because she wasn't invited to a party, or because she's got the most useless boyfriend on the planet, like everything is very tenuous with her. She's gonna snap one day. And I love that. I love that. That's so fun to play.
And I think to your point as well, the episode where she's kind of chastising Alex for allowing her personal life into the workplace is such a great example of that, because almost when she allows just a tiny simmer of emotion to seep forward, it just suddenly explodes and she can't stop it. And how
Yes.
did you find the levels and the calibrations of the comedy of how far can we take this in terms of what the emotion's going to look like when it finally does explode?
Oh, well, first of all, when she explodes, it's on a very important meeting with the board. And she explodes because her marimba teacher died, that she was attracted to. I mean, the way that she just starts vomiting out all this information. And that's one thing about people who are always saying TMI, TMI. You know, Sometimes when the floodgates open, you can't stop yourself. And boy, is that embarrassing, but it's hilarious to watch. Like, just let it trickle out a little at a time, and then you won't explode like that. But she hasn't learned that lesson yet.
And it's such a great detail to be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, in her spare time, she loves playing the marimba,
Yeah.
and making mugs and tying knots on a board. But it also kind of
Yes.
tells you a lot about the friendships that she doesn't have outside of the
Mhm.
workplace. When you read that in the scripts, were those details really crucial in figuring out that side of her?
Yeah, very crucial because that also informed how I wanted her office decorated. Because clearly, Joyce is a work first time type of person. She doesn't have a family. Okay, never had kids, never got married. So work is number one. She doesn't have time to cuddle anything. So she has little stuffed animals all around because they don't need to eat. She's got nothing but fake plants because she can't keep those alive. So in her office, she's got all kinds of little cuddly things that she can just pay attention to when she wants to and throw them on the floor when she doesn't want to. And that's everything you need to know about Joyce. She doesn't have much of a personal life because she doesn't know how. And that's why she's got that weird boyfriend. They're on and off all the time, but he doesn't make demands and she can't meet the demands that are ever made. So it works perfectly.
Yeah, I even love the fact that everybody just assumes that she's completely fabricating him because they
Yeah.
don't believe he would be real. And it's such a great point about, it works for her because it doesn't require too much.
Yeah.
But how do you feel like that changed a little bit in the episode where he does come into the workplace and suddenly those two worlds are colliding for her?
Well, I thought it was so funny during her mammogram episode when she, they see something and they need to do a biopsy, which is just a precaution. And he runs out of the hospital and throws up. Um, that to me says everything. And she's not even surprised. Like, oh, he left, didn't he? Meaning, this has happened before, probably a couple of times. And on the one hand, it's disappointing, but on the other hand, she doesn't have time to take care of him when she's the one that's worried about her own self, right? So it's almost like, yeah, Sanderson, go vomit elsewhere. Don't bother me with your nonsense.
And it's kind of interesting to see the way that she shuts down being very different to the way that she usually is, because she's usually so big and overt with all of her actions and
Yeah.
with her voice, and suddenly she just becomes very still and very quiet and very monotone. Was that a
Mhm.
choice that you found very quickly from the way it was written on the page?
Yeah, because it just seemed like, well, Joyce isn't, how do I want to explain it? It just didn't seem like she would go to pieces in that moment. In that moment, she would shut down. She would shut down and just keep forging ahead because you have to. And also because the cameras are on her. That's another thing, that having this mockumentary style of filming, that informs your character as well. Like, you're not going to go to pieces in front of the mockumentary crew. You will when you think they're not looking. But she's making this mockumentary about, breast cancer health and all of this to encourage people to go do this. So she can't go to pieces, because that undermines the whole situation.
Definitely. And I think you make such a great point there in terms of how she always wants to present a certain way and keep things together with the crew, but you do get to have those moments where she doesn't realize that they're filming. And so how
Yeah.
do you make sure that you always find those moments throughout the show of, I feel like actually I can play this a little bit differently, because I think even though they're there, she doesn't realize that they're there.
Yeah, that's become a really interesting balancing act. And when you have those through the Venetian blind moments, that's when okay, I'm assuming no one can see me. So I'll do my private stuff when that's going on. I'll cry then. But when the camera is focused on me, nope, I gotta hold it together, you know. So that's been interesting. And I've done mockumentary things before, but this one's very different in that they kind of encourage you to acknowledge the camera a lot more. And I still find that kind of hard to do. I'm trying and I do it, but I do feel like sometimes Joyce would reserve the right to say, I don't consent to being filmed right now, back off. We haven't shown that yet, but I still feel like she would say that at times. Like, you're making me look stupid, back off.
Because there's that whole added element of essentially it's a relationship with characters that we never see on screen as an audience.
Right.
But you imagine it's the same director, it's the same camera operator that's filming them all of the time. And
Yeah.
so what did you envision the spaces that she's kind of created? Because we see that she's very presentational. It's very important what their perspective of her is.
Yeah. It's very important for her. And I'm assuming at some point we're going to figure out why there's a camera following us around. But this is her big idea, to show everybody how hard they're working at St. Denis and hopefully get more donors. That's what she wants to do ultimately. So for her to be on camera, she's got to put that brave face on. If the other ones want to go to pieces, okay. But for Joyce, it's always, I'm in control. I know what I'm doing, even though, dear God, don't notice that we have a pipe broken next to the elevator, you know?
And there's kind of a double layer of it in the episode where she's trying to figure out how to use social media to garner more attention for the hospital as well, because
Yes.
you have the camera crew watching her as she's being filmed on a phone, trying to present in a certain way. And did that add extra layers in terms of what she's trying to accomplish and how she's trying to achieve it?
Yes, because I mean, just out there in life, we see a lot of medical workers making TikToks, okay? And some of them get fired because of it, unfortunately. But with Joyce, her whole thing is really like, wait a minute, Portland General has a social media following? Well, excuse me, we deserve that as well. And Christmas Eve is the greatest time of the year to do that. So I love that she's trying to work on this so hard. And she enlists Serena to help her. And Serena wants nothing to do with this. She thinks it's completely asinine. But Joyce is just like, no, 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 we got to do this. And when that kid hears for the first time with his cochlear implant and she runs in and says, no, can you hear for the first time again? Please? That just speaks to Joyce's enthusiasm for everything. But it does show also she's got a little sensitivity chip missing. She's focused on one thing at a time.
It definitely feels like she's always trying to sell optimism to
Oh,
everybody
yes.
around her, and especially with the team that she's managing at the hospital. And it almost feels like the more things are going wrong, the more she tries to oversell and the more she amps up the faux optimism that she's presenting to them. And did you find that that gave you a lot of comedic space to find within it?
Yes, and thank you for noticing that. You stated it perfectly. I used to work for this terrible little hotel near Disneyland, and we were always trying to sell it as a destination property. Okay, and the deceitful ways we would photograph the hotel really made it look like it was a tropical paradise when it was basically a trucker hotel. So I get that feeling of wanting to make something so much better than it is, but you don't even believe what you're saying anymore. You know it's all BS, right? That's what Joyce is doing. It's a rural hospital in Oregon. It's not going to be a destination medical center. That's you have that in Turkey. You don't have it in rural Oregon. But that doesn't mean that she's not going to try. Now, how long is she going to try? I don't know. And she's got some good ideas and she's got some weird ideas like, okay, put in a koi pond. Well, that's beautiful, right? But people don't want to go to the hospital at all, and a koi pond is not going to bring them there. You go to a hospital on your worst day. You don't go because, hey, you know what? I'm going to have an Instagrammable moment next to this pond, but she's trying.
And there's so much flow within the show of, it is a hospital setting and people are coming in on the worst day of their life, probably when they step in those doors. And yet you have the stuff where all of a sudden it's someone's birthday and they're playing music and they're dancing or they're trying to film videos on TikTok for social
Yeah.
media. And you find that that's part of what really allows the tone to flow a lot between these spaces where there's high comedy elements, but then there's also empathy and vulnerability alongside it within the same scenes often.
Yeah, exactly. Because, ultimately, like we were saying about having a work family, yeah, you want to celebrate people's baby showers and birthdays and whatever. It's a common thing, and you should be able to do that. It's hard to do that, though, when someone is going code blue, in one of the rooms and someone else is having a baby over here, or, there's a big emergency situation. And again, one of the reasons that we love healthcare workers and really empathize with them after doing this show is that, listen, sometimes someone just wants to eat their lunch for 10 minutes, but they can't because things keep happening, or they want to make it to their kids' softball team. And that's never going to happen with the way things are coming in the emergency room. And you just have so much empathy and respect for healthcare workers that are doing the best they can, but sometimes, listen, they just got to pee. Just let them go to the bathroom. They've been holding it in for an hour and a half. It's but yeah, those little elements do make it funny, and they kind of inform your performance. Like, you need to call your kids, but someone is about to die. You how do you it's really, really difficult to walk that line. And I'm so grateful people will do it because I'm not strong enough to.
It also feels like, with what you're describing about this workplace family and how that's such a central core to the show as well, that it is a little bit of a journey of discovery for Joyce throughout the season. She kind of views it as that, but isn't quite ready to let them all in the same way. And I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of touch points where she really sees the people around her showing up for her in a lot of ways. The mammogram episode with like Alex and Serena, and realizing they
Right.
didn't go anywhere, and the end of the season where suddenly she finds this kinship in a different way with Ron, for example. And so how did you want her to have these touch points and this growth of really understanding what it actually means for this to be a workplace family more and more?
Yeah, I wanted her to give in to that and be more vulnerable, because the thing about her is that she is vulnerable. No one believes that she's as strong as she likes to present herself as. Um, and like she does come to that realization, hey, you can bring things to work. You can bring your problems to work. You can talk about them because, we are here more than we are at home. So I guess that's unrealistic. So she does give in on that one point. One thing I would like to see in season 2, though, is I want to do a flashback to see her and Ron working as residents. I want to know what happened there, because they're both similarly beaten down. They've been doing this for a long time. But I want to know what it was like in the beginning when they were fresh out of medical school and full of great ideas and just gung ho about the whole thing. I want to see what that was like. I don't know if we're the kind of show that does flashbacks, but I hope we do.
No, now that you've mentioned that, I have so many curiosities about what it
Yeah.
looked like when they first started out together.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Yeah. Joyce was trying to manage Ron day one.
Oh, 100%. And did they hook up? Maybe.
Well,
Who knows? There
we'll
might have
hopefully
been
find out.
a night of too many margaritas.
And also you were mentioning there the idea that Joyce kind of has this thing of really needing to present herself as strong, and yet even from the pilot episode there's a warmth to her that immediately comes across. So it's not this strength that feels cold and distant even when she is trying to have a bit of a guard up around herself. And I was really interested in how you found the balance of that, because it feels so delicate to achieve.
Yeah, I tried to pattern Joyce off a woman that used to be my boss. Um, Back, before I got started in this business. And I think she knew she was fighting a losing battle. Again, this is at that terrible little hotel I worked at. But again, she was going to give it her best, and she wanted to be sweet to everybody because she needed everyone on their side, on her side. But I do really think she cared about us. And if you don't care about your staff, you can't motivate them. So I do think, Joyce has read a few books on leadership, and she does genuinely, she's not a bad person. She's not a mean person. She's just an oddball. And so I did want audiences to like her, because if they don't like her, then we're screwed, right? Then we don't want to watch the show. But yeah, I didn't want her oddball traits to make her mean. I do think she's a caring person. Otherwise, get out of healthcare. But yeah, she isn't great with interpersonal relationships, but she's not a mean person.
And even part of how she tries to motivate people, she gets very physical and loud and loves to sing a lot and kind of move
Mhm.
around, and dance moves happen quite frequently for her.
Yes.
And, that's all obviously stuff that you get those sprinkling of those details on the page, and then you really find how that manifests once you're on set and once you're
Yeah.
embodying the character. And so what was that journey for you in really finding that side of her?
Well, I did improv for a long time, and one of the things I learned is that if you're trying to change your emotional state, you have to change your physicality. So that's something that I thought Joyce might use on her employees, is that, oh, are we feeling tired? Are we having a bad day? Well, let's throw some fake judo moves in there. That'll turn everything around, won't it? So yeah, she's always kicking and dancing and doing all kinds of crazy things, but that's just to keep everybody's spirits up. Does it? I don't know. I think mostly it just makes people make fun of her, but boy, she's going to keep trying.
And in the episode where you had to play the marimba, she plays a known song and then introduces an original composition. How did
Yeah.
that all come together for that scene?
Oh, the original compositions. I had a few different titles for things, and I think they went with Smitten with Kittens.
Yeah.
Um, I just kept giving a different answer every take until they chose something that they liked. But yeah, I was very surprised when they gave Joyce that little hobby because it's bananas. But it does make sense because you do have to beat the marimbas kind of hard. And that seems like something a person with a lot of anxiety would want to do.
She also comes across as someone who very much enjoys the limelight and quite enjoys those opportunities where she gets to be on stage. And there's a couple of moments, when they have a celebrity who's coming there and she ends up on stage, and it kind of almost feels like she's presenting a WWE throwdown in that point.
Yeah.
And then there's the gala where she gets up on stage and inserts herself into co-hosting. And when you were filming those moments of her on stage, because they're very different personas that you explore in each of them, how did you find what that looked like?
Well, first of all, the way you're going to present yourself to children is a lot different than the way you're going to present yourself in front of a bunch of adults who are drinking. So one of the things that I did when we had the kids around, by the way, so much fun. That was a fun week. Those kids were hilarious. They taught me some little dances that we didn't use in the episode, but I love working with kids. They're hilarious. But one thing Joyce did was she told this terrible story about getting her own tonsils out. And it was a true story from when I got my actual tonsils out at 3 years old. So Joyce is telling this long, boring, drawn out story. They didn't use it, but they did pan to the kids at one point, and the kids look like they're all about to fall asleep. Joyce does not know how to talk to children. She has no idea. So when they start responding to her, it's like, what? What? This is the greatest day of my life. I made an impact on somebody. But yeah, that's something I want to explore about her. Like, why is she so comfortable in front of crowds? It's got to be more than just fundraising.
Also, when you were describing how, the kids don't necessarily resonate with what she's saying, there's actually quite a lot of moments, even with the staff, where she's talking to someone or she's talking to the entire team in the break room and nobody's really paying attention, but it doesn't feel like that necessarily matters to Joyce.
Yeah.
She kind of has her own dialogue with herself and even her sense of humor. As long as she's having fun and as long as she's amused, it doesn't matter if the other person's joking. And so
Yeah.
what is that experience in playing a character who really just can create their own world, and as long as they're engaged, everything's great?
Yeah. I think Joyce, because she's all about work and fundraising and all of that, she's also about liability. So she wants to get every single bit of information out there. And if you didn't listen, that's on you. But she said it, she's a bloviator. Let's just say that. She loves the sound of her own voice. She doesn't totally believe what she says anymore, but she sure loves saying it.
And I know that when you took on this role, that you've said that you were really looking for something coming off of the Goldbergs and getting this script the same day that you found out that show was wrapping up, that
Yeah.
you really saw it as something that was going to allow you to stretch in a lot of different ways and to play a character that was so different from the work that you did over several seasons on that show. And
Yeah.
how do you feel like this has really allowed you to kind of expand your creativity in a lot of new ways?
Well, I loved the character of Joyce. I mean, when I was reading it, I was like, oh, she's so weird. I think I want to play her. But what's great is that, because like you said, I didn't want to play another mom right away. I did that. And Joyce is not a nurturer. So that to me was delicious. and irresistible. Like, okay, this is completely opposite. Someone who's so career oriented that she just forgot to have a family. You know, she got involved with this work and the years just raced by, and you know, it just never even came up. It never came up. So um yeah, I love it because it's completely different than what I'd been playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a great character and such a great show. So
Oh,
congratulations on
thank
the first
you.
season. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Thank you so much.